I fell for my daughter's boyfriend. And it is the most shameful, confusing secret I have ever carried in my heart. My name is Karen, and I am 42 years old. If you looked at me from the outside, you would see a woman who has her life completely together. I have a stable job as a graphic designer, a beautiful house with a garden that I tend to every weekend, and a wonderful daughter named Sophie, who is 20 years old. I have been divorced for 5 years, and in that time, I convinced myself that I was happy on my own. I told my friends that I didn't need a partner, that I was content with my books, my art, and my quiet evenings. I believed it, too. I really did. Until the day Sophie brought Noah home. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October when everything changed. The autumn leaves were turning a deep, burning red, and the air was crisp and cold. Sophie had called me a week earlier, her voice bubbling with excitement, to tell me she was coming home from university for a few days. Then she dropped the news. "Mom, I'm bringing someone," she had said, giggling. "His name is Noah. We've been seeing each other for 3 months, and I really want you to meet him." I remember feeling a typical motherly anxiety. I wanted her to be happy, of course, but I was also protective. Sophie is young, vibrant, and sometimes a little too trusting. I wondered what kind of boy this Noah would be. In my mind, I pictured a typical university student, loud, perhaps a bit immature, maybe wearing a messy hoodie and obsessed with video games. I prepared myself to be polite, to ask the standard questions, and to endure a few days of awkward small talk. I was not prepared for the reality. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on my apron. I had been baking an apple pie, a nervous habit of mine, and walked to the front door. I took a deep breath, pasted a welcoming smile on my face, and pulled the door open. Sophie was there, grinning from ear to ear, looking lovely in her oversized coat. But my eyes immediately drifted to the young man standing behind her. He was tall, with dark, curly hair that fell slightly over his forehead. He was wearing a structured wool coat and a scarf, looking surprisingly put together for a 24-year-old. But it wasn't his clothes that stopped me. It was his eyes. They were a piercing shade of green, and they held a calmness, a depth that I had not expected. "Hi, Mom," Sophie squealed, dropping her bags to hug me. I hugged her back, squeezing tight. "It's so good to see you, honey." Then I looked at him. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, extending his hand. His voice was deep, warm, and steady. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you. Sophie has told me so much about you." I took his hand. His grip was firm, his skin warm. A strange jolt of electricity seemed to shoot up my arm. I felt foolish immediately. It was just a handshake. "Please call me Karen," I said, my voice trembling slightly. Come in. It's freezing out there." As they walked into the hallway, taking off their coats and shaking off the cold, I felt a peculiar sensation in my chest. It was a mixture of curiosity and something else, something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I watched him help Sophie with her heavy bag, lifting it effortlessly. He wasn't just a boy, he was a man. And that realization terrified me. The first evening was supposed to be simple. I had prepared a roast chicken dinner, Sophie's favorite. We sat around the dining table, the candles flickering, casting soft shadows on the walls. Usually, when Sophie brings friends over, the conversation is dominated by university gossip, complaints about professors, or plans for parties. I expected to feel like the outsider, the old mom listening to the kids. However, Noah was different. "So Noah," I asked, pouring water into his glass. "Sophie tells me you are studying architecture." "Yes, Karen," he replied, looking me directly in the eyes. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't look around the room. He looked at me. I'm in my final year. I've always been fascinated by how spaces influence human emotion. Actually, I noticed the sketches in your hallway. Did you draw them? I froze. I had a few charcoal sketches framed in the hallway, but most people walked right past them without noticing. They were old drawings from my art school days, things I had kept hidden in the attic until recently. Yes, I did, I stammered. They are very old. They are remarkable, Noah said, his tone serious. The way you captured the light in the second one, the one with the old bridge. It reminds me of the early works of Egon Schiele, but softer. You have a very specific style. My heart skipped a beat. No one had mentioned Egon Schiele to me in 20 years. My ex-husband, David, had never understood art. He used to call my drawings nice hobbies. But here was this 24-year-old boy, analyzing my technique over roast chicken. "You know art?" I asked, leaning forward slightly, forgetting my food. Sophie laughed, interrupting the moment. "Oh, Mom, don't get him started. He reads all these boring art history books. He's like an old man trapped in a young body." She said it affectionately, teasing him, but I felt a pang of annoyance. Why did she call it boring? It wasn't boring. It was fascinating. "I don't think it's boring," I said, perhaps a little too quickly. "It's refreshing." Noah smiled at me. A small, secret smile that didn't quite reach Sophie, who was busy checking a notification on her phone. In that brief second, it felt like there was an invisible thread connecting us across the table, excluding my own daughter. I looked down at my plate, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me. "Stop it, Karen," I told myself. "He is just being polite. He is dating your daughter." But as the days went by, the feeling didn't go away. In fact, it grew stronger. Sophie and Noah were staying for 4 days. Sophie, being Sophie, wanted to sleep in late. She had always been a night owl, staying up until 3:00 a.m. and sleeping until noon. I, on the other hand, was an early riser. And as it turned out, so was Noah. The next morning, I woke up at 7:00 a.m. The house was silent. I put on my robe and went downstairs to make coffee. I walked into the kitchen, expecting to be alone, but I found Noah standing by the glass sliding doors, looking out at my garden. He was wearing a simple gray t-shirt and pajama pants. His hair was messy from sleep, which somehow made him look even more attractive. He turned when he heard me. "Good morning, Karen," he whispered, so as not to wake Sophie upstairs. "Good morning, Noah," I said, tightening the belt of my robe, suddenly conscious of how I looked without makeup. "I didn't think anyone else would be up." "I like the quiet," he said, turning back to the window. "Your garden is incredible. The arrangement of the hydrangeas. It takes a lot of patience to get them to bloom like that." I walked over to stand beside him, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough to smell the scent of his soap, something clean, like pine and rain. "Gardening is my therapy," I confessed. "When the world gets too loud, I just put my hands in the dirt. It grounds me." He nodded slowly. "I understand that. I feel the same way when I am drafting a blueprint. The world disappears, and it's just lines and structure." We stood there in silence for a long time, watching the birds land on the feeder. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was a comfortable, heavy silence. I felt a desperate urge to ask him about his life, his dreams, his fears. I wanted to know everything. "Sophie hates the garden," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips before I could stop it. "She thinks it's dirty work. She prefers the city." Noah looked at me. "Sophie is spirited. She loves the energy of the world. But I think you and I appreciate the stillness." "You and I." He paired us together. He separated us from her. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew I should step away. I knew I should make the coffee and retreat to my room. I was the adult here. I was the mother. But I couldn't move. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, my voice soft. "I would love some," he said, smiling. For the next hour, we sat at the kitchen island and drank coffee. We didn't talk about Sophie. We talked about books. We talked about travel. He wanted to go to Japan to see the ancient temples. I had lived in Kyoto for a year when I was his age. His eyes widened when I told him stories about the tea ceremonies and the cherry blossoms. He listened to me with an intensity that made me feel like the most interesting woman in the world. For years, I had felt invisible. Men my age were often looking for younger women, or they were too tired, too cynical. And here was a young man, full of life, looking at me as if I were a mystery he wanted to solve. "You have lived such a fascinating life, Karen," he said, leaning his chin on his hand. "I can't believe you're just here." "Just here?" I raised an eyebrow, playful. "No, I didn't mean it like that," he laughed, and the sound was warm. "I mean, you have so much talent, so much experience. You seem bigger than this town." "Life happens," I said, looking into my mug. "Marriage, children, responsibilities. You compromise. You shouldn't have to compromise on your passion," he said firmly. At that moment, Sophie came thundering down the stairs, yawning loudly. "Mom, is there coffee? I'm so tired." The bubble burst. The magical atmosphere in the kitchen evaporated instantly. Noah straightened up, his demeanor shifting back to boyfriend mode. "Hey, Soph," he said, his voice lighter, less intense. "Yeah, your mom made great coffee." Sophie shuffled into the room, wearing her oversized pajamas, her hair a bird's nest. She hugged Noah from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "Good morning, baby." I had to look away. Seeing her touch him, seeing him lean back into her embrace, it felt like a physical blow to my stomach. Jealousy. It was pure, ugly jealousy. I was jealous of my own daughter. I turned to the sink and started scrubbing a clean mug, just to have something to do with my hands. "Breakfast will be ready in 10 minutes, I said, my voice sounding harsh and mechanical. I spent the rest of the day in a state of confusion. I tried to avoid them. I went to the grocery store for things I didn't need. I cleaned the bathroom. I locked myself in my office to work. But I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation in the kitchen. I couldn't stop thinking about how he looked at me. Was it all in my head? Was I just a lonely middle-aged woman projecting her fantasies onto a polite young man? Probably. That was the most logical explanation. But every time our eyes met across the room, I felt that spark again. And I was terrified that he felt it too. The climax of this emotional torture happened on their last night. Sophie had decided to go out to meet some old high school friends at a local bar. She wanted Noah to come, but he complained of a headache. "Do you mind if I stay here?" Noah asked her, rubbing his temples. "I really just need to rest. You go have fun with your friends." Sophie pouted, "But I wanted to show you off." "I'll be boring company, Soph. I'll just sleep, go." He kissed her forehead. Sophie, eager to see her friends, eventually agreed. "Okay, but don't wait up for me. I might be late." She left around 9:00 p.m. I was in the living room, reading a book or pretending to read. The house was quiet again. I knew Noah was in the guest room. I told myself to stay in my chair. Do not go check on him. Do not offer him tea. Just sit here. But 20 minutes later, he walked into the living room. He wasn't sleeping. He looked wide awake. He walked over to the bookshelf and started scanning the titles. "I thought you had a headache," I said, marking my page and closing the book. He turned to look at me. The shadows from the lamp cast his face in a half-light. "I lied," he said simply. My breath caught in my throat. "Why?" "Because Sophie's friends are loud, and I didn't want to drink beer in a crowded bar," he said. He walked closer to where I was sitting. "And I realized this was my last chance to talk to you before we leave tomorrow." My heart began to race so fast, I thought he might hear it. This was dangerous. We were entering dangerous territory. "Noah," I said, my voice warning. "You shouldn't lie to her." "I know," he said. He sat down on the sofa opposite me, He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. Karen, can I ask you something honest? I suppose so. Are you happy? The question hung in the air. It was so direct, so personal. That's a complicated question, I deflected. It shouldn't be, he said intense. I watch you. I've watched you for 3 days. You do everything for everyone else. You cook, you clean, you listen. But I see a sadness in you. It's in your eyes. You are imagining things, I said, standing up. I needed to move. I needed to get away from his gaze. I am perfectly content. I walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. He stood up and followed me. He didn't touch me, but he stood close behind me. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I don't think you are, he whispered. I think you are lonely. And I think you feel the connection between us too. I spun around to face him. Stop. You cannot say that. You are Sophie's boyfriend. You are 24 years old. I am old enough to be your mother. I don't care about age, he said, stepping closer. And Sophie is great, but she doesn't understand me. Not like you do. In 3 days, I've had deeper conversations with you than I've had with her in 3 months. That's because you haven't given her a chance to grow up yet, I argued, though my resolve was crumbling. She is young. You are supposed to be young together. I've never felt young, he said softly. He reached out and very gently brushed a strand of hair away from my face. His fingers grazed my cheek. The touch was electric. It sent a shockwave through my entire body. Every instinct I had was screaming at me. One part of me wanted to lean into his hand, to close the gap, to kiss him, and forget about the world. I wanted to be selfish. I wanted to be wanted. But then I saw the picture on the mantelpiece. It was a photo of Sophie and me from her graduation. She was hugging me, her face glowing with pride and love. My daughter. The person I loved more than anyone on this planet. If I crossed this line, if I let this happen, I would destroy her. I would break her heart in a way that could never be fixed. I would lose her forever. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. No amount of loneliness, no amount of connection or passion was worth the price of my daughter's trust. I grabbed Noah's wrist and pulled his hand away from my face. I stepped back, creating a solid wall of distance between us. No, I said. My voice was shaking, but it was firm. No, you are confused, Noah. You are infatuated with the idea of me, or maybe you just like that I listen to you. But this is wrong. It is fundamentally wrong. He looked hurt, his eyes searching mine. Karen. Don't, I interrupted him. I am Sophie's mother. That is who I am. And you are her boyfriend. If you do not love her, if you do not think she is right for you, then you break up with her. You tell her the truth, but you do not use me as an escape. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. I think you should go to bed. And tomorrow, you and Sophie will leave. And we will never speak of this again. Noah stood there for a long moment, the silence thick and heavy. He looked at me, and I saw the disappointment in his eyes, but also a flicker of respect. He nodded slowly. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Karen. I didn't mean to disrespect you." "Good night, Noah," I said, turning my back to him. "Good night." I heard his footsteps fade as he walked up the stairs. Only when I heard his bedroom door click shut did I allow myself to collapse onto the sofa. I buried my face in my hands and wept. I cried for the loneliness I felt. I cried for the connection I had to deny. But mostly, I cried because I knew I had done the right thing. And doing the right thing felt incredibly painful. The next morning was a blur of awkward politeness. Sophie came down late, nursing a hangover, completely oblivious to the tension in the house. "Did you guys have a nice talk last night?" she asked, buttering her toast. I froze for a second, glancing at Noah. He was drinking his coffee, looking down. "We just said goodnight," I said, forcing a smile. "I went to bed early." Noah looked up at me. His expression was unreadable, but he gave an almost imperceptible nod. When they packed the car to leave, I stood on the porch, hugging my cardigan around me. Sophie hugged me tight. "Thanks for everything, Mom. It was great to be home." "I love you, honey," I whispered into her hair. "Take care of yourself." Then it was Noah's turn. He stood in front of me, his bags in his hand. "Goodbye, Karen," he said. He didn't offer to shake my hand this time. "Goodbye, Noah," I said. "Take care of her." "I will," he said. And then he added, very quietly, "Thank you for the perspective." I watched them drive away until the car disappeared around the corner. The house felt emptier than it ever had before. The silence was deafening. It has been 6 months since that weekend. Sophie and Noah broke up 2 months ago. Sophie called me, crying, saying that Noah felt they were at different stages in life. She was heartbroken for a few weeks, but she is young, and she bounced back. She is already dating someone new, a boy from her chemistry class, who loves video games and loud music. She seems happy. As for me, I am still here. I still tend to my garden. I still paint. But I am different now. Meeting Noah woke something up inside me. It made me realize that I had been sleepwalking through my life, accepting loneliness as my fate. I realized that I do want a connection. I do want someone to talk to about art and travel. But I also learned that I am strong enough to put my values above my desires. I fell for my daughter's boyfriend, and I walked away from it. It is a secret I will keep forever. But in that secret, there is a strange kind of pride. I chose my family. I chose my integrity. And now, I have started going to an art class in the city on Thursday nights. There are people there my own age. Last week, a man named Robert asked me what I thought about the lighting in a painting. We talked for an hour. I don't know what will happen next, but I know that I am awake now. And for the first time in a long time, I am looking forward to the future. not for who I might meet, but for who I am becoming. I realized that the emptiness I felt wasn't because I didn't have a man. It was because I had stopped living for myself. Noah was just a mirror showing me what I was missing. Now, I am finding it on my own terms. And that is a story I can be proud of.